been a long road since the original Kicker christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machine became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. Outdoors or on the open road, your sound is Kicker.
Laid Back, Hondo Miller. I mean, such a cool brand, not only with the apparel, but a lot of wall art back here. What inspired the brand Laid Back?
That's hard to say, but I think the good Lord brought us the whole concept in one night, and we decided to create a brand that really focuses on the culture of America, the old cool stuff from America, and just trying to allow people to bring those memories into their apparel or into their garage art, you know, that kind of a program.
And I love it. And it is so nostalgic for that car culture. And you guys have got shirts. And I mean, it's really cool because it reminds me of that American muscle. And I mean, did you grow up as a car connoisseur, as a car fan, as a builder? What was your upbringing in it?
My dad was president of the van club in the 70s. Kansas City Van Club. So, you know, he was a big custom car guy back in the day. And just, I guess it was in my blood from the early ages.
I like it. So now we're going to kind of shift our attention to this beautiful build over here. Take me through this car, which is actually yours.
Thank you. It's a 1969 Chevy Blazer. Came out of Anaconda, Montana as just a front yard piece of art that had been sitting there for about 20 years. And we decided to put it on a Speed Tech Performance chassis, which is an autocross driven chassis. So it's really designed to be driven. Yeah, we made it really pretty, but it's designed to be a performance vehicle.
I like how you call it a piece of art. I mean, is that how you see cars here at the SEMA show?
Absolutely, absolutely. They're all a piece of art, you know, and some art's different, you know, and everyone has their own appeal or their own how they interpret art, you know, and we just feel like this is our way of showing kind of what we can do, you know.
So something that kind of immediately draws my attention to this car and this build is the gray exterior and kind of the maroon accents on this car. What do you like about those colors, and why go with that on this one?
You know, I was always a silver guy, and then I bought a car that was this color, and now I've painted 3 cars that color because I just really like it. It's gray, but it isn't dark gray. It's not what you see out there, and so we really just wanted a unique color. And then the guys at Interior Revolution, who are world-class interior guys, they suggested this kind of a dark maroon to go along with that color, and I had to be persuaded, but I'm very thankful that they stepped up.
Now, the one thing that I think really makes this car pop, the one thing that you can hear from all the way down in the South Hall entrance is the speaker system on this car, and Kicker did you a big favor on this car. It looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. I mean, tell me about the speaker system, how it really encompasses that laid-back brand.
Yeah, you know, Kicker's been supporting us for about the last 8 years, and we're just huge fans of them and of audio, and so we just reached out to Roger and kind of told him about the build and what we were wanting to do, and they loaded us up with 8 speakers, 2 subs, and the nice marine deck, the media center, And as you can hear, the quality of what they produce is amazing.
Oh yeah, you can literally hear it down the South Hall as you enter, and it is so cool. I think it's the only booth that might be playing reggae, but I love it. Very laid back style. So thank you so much for your time and showing us this awesome car.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Enjoy your time at SEMA.
I'm Steve Irby. I'm the president and the founder of Kicker. Back in high school, I was playing in a rock and roll band and needed a bigger speaker for my keyboard. And I went to my dad and asked him for $300. I remember the newspaper kind of dropped and he says, "Is that something that we could build?" 2 or 3 days later, he came home with a book on audio and it had plans for building speakers. We built a speaker enclosure and put an amp on it, and I played my keyboard through it, and it sounded really good. I graduated from college and went to grad school. I began to realize I don't want to be a sociologist, and decided that I was going to drop out of grad school and start a speaker company. I had about $12,000 that I had inherited from my grandparents. It seemed to make sense to use it to start a business. And so we bought woodworking tools, we bought plywood, and we got plans from the Alltech Lansing company for building these big voice of the theater speakers that a lot of bands used. We started building those in the garage and just selling them to local bands. In 1980, a friend of mine contacted me and said that he had started a music store in Canton, Oklahoma, and there was a lot of guys that drove pickup trucks. I designed a speaker that fit just in the little wedge shape behind a seat in a single cab pickup truck and sent it over to him. And he called me back a few days later and, the guys love this speaker, we need more, and you know what they call it? And I go, no, what do they call it? And he goes, well, they call it the ass kicker. Back in the early 2000s, we got involved primarily in motocross. We were looking for ways to market our product. We began using the tagline, "Living Loud," and so motocross went right along with that. Arena cross was a natural fit for us, wanting to live loud with motorcycles and the people that enjoy watching that type of events. We're very excited to be involved with Arena Cross and where it's going today.
Do not attempt to adjust this transmission. We have assumed control.
The year is 1980. Music fights for its very survival in an acoustically desolate wasteland man calls automobile. Enter Steve Irby, a man whose love of music helped end this scourge forever and forge a path for modern car audio to follow. A humble musician with a passion for quality sound, Mr. Irby is a man who feels it is his destiny to provide a sanctuary for mobile audio. Welcome. Join us this evening as we venture back to the very night a young Steve Irby gains his inspiration to create the legacy we know today as Kicker Performance Audio. Though he does not realize it now, by this time tomorrow, Mr. Irby will have completed blueprints for the original Kicker and champion the war against mobile audio inequality. Tonight, Mr. Irby's prayers will be answered as he begins his quest into the Q-Zone. Kicker L7QB8. With roots dating back to Kicker's inception, Mr. Irby and his team of engineers have achieved an unrivaled level of design and functionality. With extraordinary bass and a minimal footprint, the L7QB8 utilizes a seamless quarter-inch extruded aluminum housing, allowing optimal internal air volume for the subwoofer. This exclusive design provides exceptional strength and stability. Like the original Kicker, the L7QB8 incorporates a unique passive radiator to minimize required airspace, while optimizing the efficiency and frequency response of the subwoofer. Opposite the passive radiator, the L7QB8 is equipped with the all-new 8-inch L7 square subwoofer. The 2016 L7 features an aluminum basket for exceptional strength and thinned aluminum heat sinks for efficient heat dissipation. Kicker's blue lace spider, Solocone 360-degree back bracing, and a laser-etched cone brace combine as a single ultra-rigid unit. The result is increased clarity, higher volume, and added reliability. The square cone features over 20% more surface area than round subwoofers. It's attached to a Santoprene surround, then stitched to the cone for long life and durability. This surround features Kicker's patented ribbed corners, which fully dictates cone motion and extends surround life. At the base of the unit, a pair of custom-formed flanges integrate seamlessly with an extremely low-profile mounting system, consisting simply of a mounting plate and bar. Once installed, the overall height of the enclosure is only 9.5 inches. This profile is small enough to work perfectly in countless trucks, sedans, and SUVs. Once again, Kicker sets a new standard with the groundbreaking design and unparalleled performance of the all-new L7QB8.
everybody, it's Tuesday night at 7:30, and you know what that means. 7:30 right here live from the UnMasked studios in Stillwater, Oklahoma. We are coming to you for Kicker Unmasked Live. Don't forget, every Tuesday night at 7:30 on the YouTube and Facebook channel by your wonderful host Kicker, you will find this show, and this is where we do all things car audio and all things Kicker. So we hope you have some fun. We hope to teach you a little bit, and like I say, answer some questions. Feel free to chime in on the chats if you guys are new to the group. We've got a chat group going. We've got people on staff answering questions. I'll be answering questions as we go. They'll pop them up live. So make sure you participate. Make this a good show for you guys as well. Also, make sure if you like the show, hit like and subscribe. We want to keep doing this. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't want to get a real job. So let's keep doing this. Let's have some fun. Hit that like and subscribe. Let your buddies know what we do here. And like I say, if you know somebody that just needs to learn a little bit about car audio, this is the place to do it. We always have a lot of fun. I'm your host. I'm John Myers. I'm the Senior Global Trainer for Kicker. And once again, we have not been very global lately, but we're going to go global soon. So starting in April, we're going to start getting out to some events, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. And once again, we've got the usual crew on hand, so we're going to have a great show tonight. We got Tim behind the camera right behind me, and clear back in the back there, we got Bill Frog answering questions. We got JW, and we got Ernie on the consoles, running all the electronics. So there they are, waving you guys. So if you guys have any technical glitches, audio, video that you see, it's not me. It's those guys back there. So, but they do a pretty good job. I don't think we have to worry about that. So as always, since I'm old and I keep doing this, I got to make sure I do my checklist, and occasionally I'll pull out these glasses because, there's some housekeeping things we always like to do. Want to make sure that you guys understand that we always try to do things as a family to get together. We have a great dinner before every show. I'm starting to sound like a food critic, I know it, but we broke the trend. 2 weeks in a row we had Texas Roadhouse, but I think JW, wasn't that you that decided we were going to do Chipotle tonight? So if you guys haven't had their barbacoa and their steak bowls, and by the way, here's a little food tip for you. Being a fat guy, I know these kind of things. But with Chipotle, if you get the bowl rather than the burrito, I think they actually give you more. So that's my little food tip to you guys. If you need a little bit more to satisfy you, go ahead and order the bowl. But it's great as always. And maybe one of these days, one of these companies will give us some free food for giving them all the perks. Also, I don't think you guys have been paying much attention. We want to make sure you guys know we have an incredible contest going. If you guys watched the show last week, we talked about alternators. We had a great show. I actually learned a lot about alternators. But the guys at MacMan, Tony and Matt, they've decided that they want to pony up a grand prize for us, so we're going to start a giveaway. In fact, Ernie, why don't you pull that up for us? Let's talk about the giveaway. So MacMan is going to be giving away an alternator. This is a 24 karat gold plated. I think we decided it was going to be 400 amps still, right? Isn't that correct, guys? Yes, sir. Ernie says yes, it is a 400 amp alternator. I think he's sleeping at the console back here. Alternator. That's what happens when you got a cold, you can't even speak. They're going to pick at you how you talk. But, that's funny. Hey, if you can laugh at me, I can laugh at me. We can all have some fun with it. If you guys have noticed that little picture up there, there's good old Alma's Bronco. And I don't think we pulled up the picture of that one. That Bronco actually had 300 amp alternators. We put 4 of them on that thing. 48 10-inch L7 Alma Gate Special Edition woofers. We had 48 ZR1000 amplifiers in that vehicle. We had 44 lead-acid batteries. The rear screen, the differential, and the body, that was the suspension. I think that Bronco was 17,400 pounds. Extremely heavy. But guys, make sure you register for that gold-plated alternator. How often do you get a chance to win one of those? And even if you don't use it on your vehicle, what a conversation piece on your coffee table. If your wife will let you have it out, and if she doesn't, that's okay. Just do it anyway. So once again, make sure you register for that. And don't forget, we have our own contest every week, just like we do every single Tuesday night at 7:30 right here on Kicker YouTube and Facebook channel and UnMasked Live. We have a giveaway contest. And Ernie, why don't you go ahead and pop up my laptop here. We're going to talk about a couple things. And right away, you see on the face page, when you open this up, you see our new L7T 10-inch down-firing enclosures. A little bit of a teaser. You saw this last week. These woofers technically are shipping. They're actually the first batch of them. was in the warehouse just long enough to see what the warehouse looked like before they were shipped out and they're gone. But we're out of stock, but they will come back in stock. But remember, if you want an L7T downward firing woofer, make sure you get your order in soon. But those are shipping. They're available 8, 10, and 12 inch from 350 to 600 watts power handling. These things sound great. You're going to love them. But if we get back into our website here, if you guys haven't been to our website, just a quick little tour of this. As I scroll down, you're going to see the little snowman pods, the KSD 250 or 2504 pods. These little mid-range tweeter pods are absolutely incredible little speakers. They're also shipping. So if you need to get that sound stage up on top of the dash and you don't have an access to put a speaker in the dash or a tweeter, these are a great way to do it. But what I really want to show you guys is as you scroll down, we do a lot to teach you guys about car audio in the show. And we've got some great guests, and we've got a great guest coming up here in a little bit. But we've got a great section here as you scroll down called Kicker Tech. If you click on that, and you're going to have to scroll again, you're going to see a couple different tabs here. You're going to see videos, so all different kinds of videos. You can see the unmasked videos if you missed any of the training videos, software updates, if you've got Tweak, if you've got, the Kicker Connect app. If you need a manual for any product, old or new, this is where you can access that. And the one I really want to point out, of course, is the tech paper section. If you click on that, if there's something you really need to know, and it's not a Tuesday night where you can get a hold of us, or it's an evening when the support guys are not in the building, go ahead and look through this. You're going to find a whole lot of information. I mean, here we got section alternator and batteries, amplifier, power testing, crossovers, fit inputs, front row, how to avoid getting noise when installing RGB lights in boats. There's a lot of great information here. So feel free to jump into some of these tabs. And like I say, there's some good information. But if you guys have questions, let us know. And I don't know, do we have any good questions coming up right now, JW? Anything good yet? I don't see anything up there. So once again, guys, if you have questions, don't be shy. Feel free to chime right in. But as we go to the website, we talk about giveaways. We're always going to give something away on the show. And like I said, we have fun giving stuff away. We don't have to go anywhere, so we can afford to do that once in a while. So this week, we've got a great contest going. Once again, it starts at 7:15. You can actually register before the show starts. And we start seeing your feeds at 7:15 too. So don't be afraid to post any comments. And if you want to say anything, feel free to let us know even before we start filming the show at 7:30. But this contest will end promptly at 8:30. And at 8:45, we will give gear away. So the third prize winner is going to win the EB400 wireless earbuds, which are the water-resistant earbuds. You're going to get the Kicker koozie and the gray Kicker shirt that's over my shoulder back here. Second prize is going to get the Tabor 2 wireless headphones. They're an over-the-ear Bluetooth wireless earphones, but they've come with a cord also, so if you don't forget to charge them, they still work just great. And the grand prize winner is going to win the Cush noise canceling, or the Cush NC. And I tell you this every week, and it's true. I use them almost every single day. I always listen to some music before I go to bed, watch some of the shows, actually go back and recap, the show that we did. So it's nice to be able to do that. Even my wife sleeping right next to me. And with the noise canceling, any fans, any other drones, it's going to cancel that noise. It really makes it a truly, awesome listening pleasure to have those headphones. So once again, make sure you register for this contest. Here again, look for us at events here in the future. We're going to go back here to our Kicker Facebook page. As we click over and scroll up a little bit, you notice the wonderful Kicker facility. And I can tell you guys, every week, if you're in Oklahoma, Monday through Friday, between 8 and 5, stop by and check out our museum. We've got an incredible museum up front. In fact, we're adding to it as we speak. But we got Captain Phil's motorcycle, we got Aaron Hagar's rat rod, we've got a Snowcat, we've got a Nash Metropolitan, we've got a Econoline pickup. I think down there we got a little Chevy Cruze. We've got some really cool vehicles, not to mention a Russian Trabant. I know Russian's been kind of in the news lately, but we got one of their cool little paper-mache cars that was a competition vehicle back from the 80s and 90s. That's really cool to figure that this thing's got a 2-cylinder, 2-cycle motorcycle engine, and it's got 2 Comp 18s in the trunk, 8-inch woofers in the floor. I mean, it's a pretty cool little vehicle. But if you look at the website, you scroll down here, you're going to see a lot of cool stuff. If we click on the More tab, you're going to start popping up the events that are happening, that have happened, and that are happening. Also, if you notice the Master Tech Expo, it ends today. If you guys had a chance to go to that, let us know what you thought. Let us know what you liked, what was really interesting. We'd like to hear from you. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make it out to that show. Brian does an incredible job, and I actually watched the live feed from that show. And those guys really put on one heck of a learning experience. So if you guys get a chance to do one in the future, and I'm going to assume they're going to do them in the future because I think this thing went over really well, make sure you guys, make a break from work or your daily lives to go to this Master Tech Expo if you really want to learn how to do some incredible fabrication. So as we scroll down a little bit farther, of course, we got the Volusia Half Mile live from Volusia Speedway Park. Once again, Lauren is out there. Lauren does an awesome job representing the Kicker brand. I wish we had pictures of his new wrap truck. He just got a Dodge pickup and it's wrapped up. It looks like Evel Knievel. It really does. It's red, white, and blue. And if you looked at it real quick, it's like, I thought Evel Knievel passed away. But nope, he lives in life and in form right through Lauren. So if you guys get a chance, check out the events. And you can't forget the Base Wars events. Those things are everywhere. So a little bit farther down the line, once again, we mentioned that we are starting to travel. So I know Aaron and I will be down in Indianapolis for the Knowledge Fest at the first weekend in April. And I actually have booked my tickets today. I'll be in Seattle the week of May 9th through the 14th up for the Pac Northwest Expo up there. So if you get a chance, come out and see us. And once again, we keep forgetting to mention, or I guess I keep forgetting to mention, that's why I got notes up here and glasses on. And in fact, the funny thing is, what I'm going to tell you is not even in the notes, but you guys from Canada that are watching, clear up there, you guys are eligible to win prizes too. So don't be afraid to register. We've worked it out with our guys up in Canada, GemSend. So we're going to take care of you guys. And like I say, the more viewers we get on the show, the more experience, the more excitement we get, the more requests. We'll try to open that up to other countries as well. Last week I showed you guys a video from the Philippines that was posted on the Kicker group. So that was pretty awesome. I do want to give a shout out to our guys down in South Africa. I was talking with the sales manager today, Dave Glasgow, and those guys are absolutely killing it in South Africa. I bet you guys didn't know we sold any car audio in South Africa. Those guys are just, I don't even want to tell you the number because it doesn't even sound real, but they've done an awesome job, always great marketing. In fact, one of the cars that we actually saw from South Africa ended up in our catalog. It was actually a Mustang. You probably didn't even notice if you look at our new catalog, but the white Mustang was actually a car that was built in South Africa. Those guys are killing it. Of course, you can't forget the guys in Australia too. Custom Car down in Australia, Rob and Philip and Harris, all those guys, and John. It's really nice to have those guys supporting the product from down under, eh? But once again, we've got a huge following. Like I say, let's have some fun. Let's learn a little bit about car audio. Let's keep this show going. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. Ask questions. If you have questions outside of the normal show time, don't forget to hit, send an email to support@kicker.com. We've got great guys up here that are answering questions from 8 to 5 during the week. And once again, if it's after those hours, they get to you pretty quickly, usually by the next morning. So they do a great job of answering the question for us. But we are about ready to hit the road, and we've actually got some new products. And I think if you guys saw that website up here, you saw something we're going to show you in just a minute. But while I still got the laptop up, Ernie, let's go ahead and pull up the Kicker Club. Andy has done a phenomenal job with the Kicker Club. He's got a post here for all the Kicker fans, and it is pretty much everything audio, not just Kicker, but it's really cool for the family to come together, outside of this group, in his group, and, a lot of us follow. I know I've answered questions, Ken answers questions, Aaron, Carlos, Travis, Jeremy, a lot of those guys will get in and chime in with questions, if you guys have them on the Kicker group. And I think Andy's also started doing his own live show, which is kind of fun, called Living Loud with Andy. Way to go, Andy. You're doing a great job. But if you're not a member of the Kicker Club, go ahead and sign up for that. As we keep pulling over, don't forget we've got a Kicker YouTube channel, and some of you might be joining us from the YouTube channel. As I scroll down here, don't forget, obviously, you've got all your Unmasked Weekly repeats. You can click onto those. We've got uploads of videos left and right. We have all the Tech Force videos. We have technical support videos on certain products. In fact, we pull up one of these technical support videos. Got good old Tyson up here. He does a great job, and Tyson hasn't been with us for a while, but a lot of this information is still relevant. So don't forget about the Kicker YouTube, Facebook channel, and you can't forget the Kicker Instagram channel. We've got that, and once again, as I scroll down here, I was looking through the Instagram page today. There's just a lot of really cool stuff. And talking about Andy's Kicker Club, I keep asking you guys, and we got a promotion going, Send in your pictures of your installs. We want to see them. And of course, Bill will post them up on Instagram as well. But if you guys do a lot of work and you work really hard to get your systems dialed in, let's show the world. Let's show them some really cool things you do. This was actually really cool. This truck that I saw today, I'm going to click on this. We don't need the sound on this. But this is an awesome truck that was done by Gas Monkey Garage down south, down in Dallas, Texas. I mean, just beautiful work from these guys. And I'm not sure if you guys watched the show. I mean, they do a lot of crazy, crazy vehicles. We've done some work with the Misfit Garage guys down there as well. But this is an absolutely gorgeous red and gray truck. And if you notice the Kicker KS series in the doors, and of course, you've got the Comp RT subs in the back. What a great pickup. So, great pictures, great installs. So, like I say, send them to us. I love this picture as well. This box here, once again, decked out with 4 L7T subwoofers. I mean, to go behind the seat of a pickup. There's a lot of really cool stuff if you guys are bored. So make sure you look at all that stuff. But let's go ahead and exit out of that there, Ernie. Let's go back to the live feed if you don't mind. So, as I was talking about, some of the new products, they come in, they go, but this is the new L7T enclosure. They're available 8, 10, and 12 inch. And what's kind of cool about this enclosure, something I really like, is it's even got a square terminal cup. Unfortunately, no, guys, you installers, we don't have square hole saws yet, but we get enough requests for them. We might figure out a way to make them. But this box is unbelievably shallow. You drop this in your vehicle, you can stack anything you want on top of it. They sound good, and once again, they are out of stock at the moment, but they have been in stock, which means they're coming in stock again. So, once again, just keep watching those websites. They look absolutely killer, and they sound even better. I think the L7T is probably one of my favorite subwoofers for the buck of all time. So as we scroll down here, don't forget to let your friends know. Again, like and subscribe all the time. Like I say, just let us know. It doesn't take much effort to hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget the Kicker Club. And along with that, as we started doing last week, we've got a little section where we're going to answer readers' questions, and questions were sent to the support group. So it's a good thing I got my glasses on for these, because this is in actual type, and I'm going to read them to you here. So I won't tell you who wrote this in. It says, "Hi there, I have one of your CX 360 point amplifiers, and it's my understanding the amp is rated for 90 watts at 2 ohms per channel," and that is correct. It's actually rated 65 watts per channel at 4 ohms. So 65 per channel at 4 ohms, 90 watts at 2 ohms. So my question is, can I safely run 2 4-ohm speakers per channel wired in parallel on this amp for a total of 8 speakers? The answer is yes, that is correct. He does also ask, would that equate to 2 ohms per channel, and would this provide 45 watts of power to each speaker? Very good question, and the answer to both of those is yes. So when that amplifier is running 4 channels at 2 ohms, it is driving 8 speakers altogether, or 4 pair. Each channel is going to see 2 ohms, but that 90 watts is split between those 2 speakers. So it's going to be 45 watts to each one of those 8 speakers. So great question, because a lot of people don't understand exactly what happens when you bridge an amplifier, when you got multiple speakers, on one channel, how many watts do each one get? Just remember, the total wattage output has to be divided between the number of speakers on that channel. So the next interesting question, this is kind of an interesting one as well. So, hello, I'm working on installing a system in a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle. Love those cars. I have KSC 3504s in the dash and the KSS 6504 for the kick panels, and I've got 2 44 L7S 102 subwoofers I want to use in the trunk. I want to have these subwoofers in a box under the rear window facing the back seat. I have a couple of questions. Would the Kicker CXA 1200.1 be enough power for the subwoofers? Do you have a recommended box sealed or ported? Do you have a recommended size for a ported box or designed for these subs? And that's a really good question, because one of the things we learned a long time ago, and we're going to probably learn some of that today too, is speaker boxes, when it comes to woofers, there's different types and different styles. I personally like a larger sealed enclosure, but vented enclosures are good as well. Now, in this particular application, he talks about mounting them basically behind the back seat, under the rear deck, facing into the seat. You can do that. It's very convenient for space and for room, because you're not going to take up a lot of trunk that's usually fairly dead space up there as far as hauling. The problem you need to watch out for is something we call standing waves or cancellation. So with the speaker so far forward in the vehicle, you will actually have some cancellation of bass because some of that bass goes behind the subwoofer box as well as in front of the box. It actually goes two different directions at once. Well, then those reflections will reflect off the taillights and the floor area, and when they hit, they'll cancel at the driver. The way you solve this and to maximize your performance, if you're going to put your subwoofers under the back window of a car facing into a seat, is you want to seal that rear deck and back seat off with, MDF or something solid so all the bass is forced into the car. Now, the question in this design is, would you recommend a sealed or a ported box? And in this application, depending on how closely you push it up to the back seat, I'm probably going to recommend a sealed enclosure. The reason being is anytime you obstruct the area of a port, if you push that port right up to the back seat and obstruct its airflow, you're going to lose output. Whereas the sealed box is going to not have that issue because all the pressure is coming from the woofers. So that's true of any ported box in any application. If you have a ported box with a port coming out the side and you jam it between the wheel wells of a vehicle, you're going to lose a lot of output because the port does all the work at that tuning frequency. So on that question, I'm going to recommend go ahead and use the 1200.1 on those subs and definitely go ahead and do a sealed enclosure. Since you were talking about 12-inch woofer, or actually 10-inch woofers, I'm going to recommend anywhere from 3/4 to 1.5 cubic foot on those subwoofers. The smaller enclosure is going to hit harder. The larger enclosure is going to play a little bit deeper, but once again, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of room. And this one is actually really interesting, and this one came from Bill Frog. He actually wanted to make sure we got a question that he posted. He kind of feels left out sometimes if you guys don't ask him enough. Bill Frog says, yep, and he'll be here actually all day too. So, hi y'all, I've run across a question. I want to see if you can help me. I'm asking how to make it harder to steal the KMTC. I've put a set of these speakers on an RZR, and the customer's asking how to secure it. Well, the KMTCs are the kicker tower speakers, the marine speakers we see in the back over here. No, you actually can't see them in the feed. Sorry about that. But there are 9 and 11-inch tower cans that actually rotate. We've spent a lot of work to design those speakers to be removed very easily. You've got two speaker connections for each speaker. So you got a positive, negative for the mid. You have a positive and negative for the horn. You also have the 4 LED wires. So we've taken a lot of pride in designing a mount that makes this very quick and easy to take off. There's 2 little thumb screws. You'll pull those off and pull the little locking bar off, and that whole speaker just pulls off. So I can understand your concern about wanting to lock that speaker and making it a lot more secure. And unfortunately, the way that speaker is designed, we designed it specifically to make it very difficult to remove. But if you get online, I did a little bit of research today, there are some companies that offer some tamper-proof like hardware, and the hardware on that, if I remember right, is a 1/4-20, so just a 1/4-inch diameter, 20 threads per inch pitch bolt. So a typical 1/4-20, tamper-proof nut would probably work. You can probably get that tight enough that one of these guys, if they were trying to steal the speakers, wouldn't be able to come up with a quick way to do that or have the right tool with him. But there really is no good answer to that question. Once again, they were designed to come off easy, and we pretty much have to redesign the mount. But if you have the KMFCs, that's the flat mount, they actually bolt on with 4 Allen bolts from all 4 corners of that speaker. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to unbolt because now they have to take out 4 Allen bolts rather than just 2 thumb screws and pull it right off. So the solution may be to swap them out from the KMTC, the T being the tower version, or the KMFC, F being the flat mount or factory mount. So great questions, guys. I appreciate you for doing that. I think I'm going to pull up something here. It's time for Viewers Photos of the Week. Once again, we talk about Kicker Clubs. Send your pictures in, guys. We're going to feature a couple pictures every week on the show so we can publish your installs and make them seen, on live TV, so to speak. The other cool thing about it is I think we're going to, at some point, we're going to start drawing some of these pictures out, and we're going to start having you guys appear on the show to talk about your systems, why you did what you did, what's hooked up to it, and don't be afraid if it's not all Kicker gear. We just want to see your installs. So before I get going here, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up on the laptop, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Ernie, go ahead and switch back over to the laptop. We're going to start talking about some of these pictures, and you guys come up with some crazy ideas, and these are the old KS speakers back before the KSC. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the 6.5-inch drivers up front, and it even looks like an L7S 8-inch woofer in the door. So I bet you this vehicle is pretty loud. I wish they would have posted, maybe he did, I just didn't see it, what woofers he has to keep up with this. But there's no right or wrong in audio. Apparently this guy's after quantity and quantity exclusively, but he should have a ton of kicker sound coming out of that. Here's another interesting picture, and it's a very simple picture, but it's something a lot of us don't think about. And I always like to bring up, it's the preparation of doing an install. If you notice, he's got the noise reduction material, the dampening material on the door. It's very well sealed. And he's got the KSC6930 in the door. But something very interesting, and I apologize, guys, because I'm old school. I'm not sure if this is a factory trimmer around that speaker, or if that's an aftermarket piece. But it almost looks like it's got a little rubber gasket that seals that speaker up to the door. And I've learned a long time ago that, they make fast rings. If you don't know what fast rings are, they're foam rings that go around the speaker that basically force the sound of the speaker through the door panel. Therefore, it can't escape to go in between the door panel and the inner and outer door panels, and you lose output. By using the fast rings or some type of foam that you can even get at any of your hardware stores like Home Depot or Lowe's, seal that speaker to that door, you're going to get much better mid-bass and a lot better sound overall. It's going to have less resonance on the door panel. So I wanted to pull this picture up because it's a great way of someone that took pride and did a really good clean install. And that looks like Craig Wazalowski. I probably pronounced that wrong. I probably murdered your name, Craig, and I apologize. But I suppose we need to go back and give credit to our gentleman with the first picture, and that was AJ Rivera that did the vehicle with all the KS speakers. So the next picture I want to point out, and this picture is from Jeff Cavalier. Once again, I'm so bad at reading names and actually even worse at remembering them. This is a boat. If I remember, I think these guys are in Lake Havasu, Wired for Sound. They do some unbelievable installs. I mean, there were picture after picture of some unbelievable boat installs. But the reason I wanted to show you guys this, if you haven't seen them, we make LED rings that go around our marine speakers. We offer them in a 6.5, 8, 10, and a 12-inch LED ring, and they work very nicely on the KS and the CS speaker line as well. So if you want to light the speakers up from the back and around the sides as well as the cone, once again, don't forget about those LED speaker rings. And here's another install, and this one's done by Josh Matthews. I don't think I screwed up your name too bad, Josh. I apologize to the other guys. But there's a lot of work and a lot of thought that went into this enclosure. That looks like 412s under the back window of a truck in this really nicely sculpted gray enclosure. He's got a couple speakers mounted in the center for some rear fill, for almost a rear fill center channel, and he's got the KXA amplifiers mounted in little slots underneath. So that's awesome. Guys, I really appreciate you sending the pictures out. Please send more. We'd love to see them. We'd love to feature your installs on the show. And of course, we've got any questions, I think, Jeremy? Anybody got any good questions we need to answer before we go on? I'm seeing silence. Aha! So, with the Solo X being so linear, with really low distortion, in regards to SQ, do you recommend the Q class or the Solo X? Now, that's a really good question. When it comes down to it, for pure SQ, it's not about output. It's not about sheer power, and that's where the Solo X is really going to shine, and especially the L7X as well. But if you guys remember back to iASKA competition, Gary Biggs, which we'll use his name, Gary used to work for us and still a good friend. Gary won iASKA World Championship with a pair of the 18-inch original Solo X woofers in the back of his Buick Regal. If you do it right, you can do any woofer for sound quality as long as it's got good flat bandwidth, and these speakers are going to have that. So that being said, I mean, there really is no right or wrong. When the L7X comes out, it's definitely going to have a whole lot more power handling, a whole lot more output. But I guarantee you, with as much effort has been spent on the time and design of that speaker and get all the materials exactly right, those things are going to sound really good too. But once again, make sure how many times are we going to say once again? I got to quit doing that, guys. Like, you're going to start throwing things at me. But make sure you guys understand that any speaker we design that comes out of this building was designed by pretty much Steve Irby and his ears and a team that he directs himself, which kind of leads me to the next point, which is going to be our special guest. So we like to bring special guests up on the show, and tonight we're going to bring out our own Aaron Surratt, and he's going to talk about how he works with Steve and what he does specifically for the company. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey,
it's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So how many times did I say the same thing over and over again? They always give me a hard time about, and then.
Quite a few, but that's all right.
It's kind of like my get the people that do the speeches, So, hey, if you can't laugh at yourself. But anyway, Aaron, I know you and I have worked together how long have you been with Kicker?
23 years, coming up on 24.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Now, I know you've actually been in a couple different departments, but where did you start out?
Started off in tech support.
So
did
answering
that.
questions.
Yeah, answering questions, filled in consumer and dealer calls. Did that for about 4 years, and then transferred over to the training department. Worked directly with John and a few other guys that you guys have probably seen and heard on this show.
Those other knuckleheads.
Yeah, worked with those guys in the training department for quite some time. I don't know, 8 or 10 years or so. And then after that, I transferred to the R&D department. And so now I work in R&D. I'm the new product development manager. Do a lot of prototyping on product. I'm in on the acoustic approval of our product. I get to play with things and try to make them sound good. That's the favorite part of my job. And I also work with Jeremy Brown, another guy you guys might
JB.
know. Yeah, we're a team together, so he helps me out as well as manages the specifications.
I've been here
and all of our
25
manuals.
years. You've been here 23. How long has JB been? He's been here longer than I have. It's 27?
No, he's been here he started maybe 2 months after I did.
Okay.
So pretty much the same amount
I
of
was
time
thinking
as
he'd
me.
been here he does such a good job. It seemed like he was always here.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But he is a long-term employee as well.
So I know, and kind of tip it off a little bit, you do a lot with speaker design and enclosure designs, and a lot of these enclosures that we're seeing, pretty much were kind of your baby. Tell how it all got started out, and I think I got a little something to talk about down here. I'm going to reach down and pick this up, and I'm going to set it up here. I want you to tell us what this thing is and what it started.
Well, this was...
Tell me how heavy it was.
Yeah, this was one of the first prototypes I built when I came into the R&D department. Bob Spencer, our VP of R&D, came to me and tasked me with trying to take some cues from the home audio industry and come up with something that's really small and compact, but that produces a lot of bass. And, the home audio industry does it with a lot of DSP and tons of power and really super long throw drivers. And we wanted to take something that we had in stock and be able to do it with that. So I started playing.
Definitely small.
Yeah, definitely small. Started off with a 10. We actually decided to come out with an 8-inch for production, but we prototyped several different sizes, played around with it. We did some that actually had 3 passive radiators on it and 1 driver, but that would be a bit costly, adds a little size to the enclosure.
It was pretty cool.
It was cool, and it was a lot of fun, but just not as practical. It did work, though. It worked quite well. But this was a lot more practical, quite a bit smaller, plays really low bass for the size of the enclosure and quite a bit of output for the size of the enclosure. So we did some demos, showed it to some guys around here, and they decided to run with it. And
we loved it.
Since it's a compact enclosure, we decided to go with the 8-inch to make it as small as possible, to give people big bass from a really small enclosure.
And that's a 10 we have up here.
Yes, and so this is a 10. We never actually went into production with this, but this was part of the prototyping process. And quite frankly, prototyping these 2 drivers enclosures kind of trickled down into several of our enclosures, because then we came out with the Comp RT enclosures with the passive radiator.
The TCWRTs.
Yep, and then the TRTPs with the downfire version with the passive radiator. So there was a lot of experimentation that went on with this, a lot of trial and error, but once we got it figured out, we trickled it down into quite a few products.
Well, for those of you guys that don't know, passive radiator, what we refer to as a reflex subwoofer. Aaron, tell them what that is and how you actually use that, and what is that on the front of that speaker?
Well, okay, so this one actually, this is our bass reflex subwoofer or passive radiator, and it works basically just like a port. So a port is a weighted column of air and a tube with some resistance, and that tunes your driver. Well, this is just a weighted diaphragm, and so it adds weight for the driver to move and provides you tuning. The nice thing about this, though, is we can just add weight to it when we want to lower the tuning, versus a really long port that would require low bass from a box this small. It just wouldn't be practical. The port would be way longer than the box would be.
Sometimes the port could actually be bigger volume than the box.
Exactly, especially when you start getting into really small enclosures.
And tuning them really low.
That's right. So that's where a passive radiator comes into play. You can't stuff a port in this box to tune it low enough because it's just too big. So that's the cool thing about passive radiators. That's one of the pros that we have over using ports.
And that's why we tell you guys, when you're doing boxes, if you have a good sealed box and you think you want to make it better by cutting a hole in it and shoving a port in it, don't. Not going to be the best thing to do. It really needs to be designed that way. But if you think about it, when did we start doing passive radiators, Aaron?
Well, that's kind of how our company got started in making big sound in vehicles. I think the very first Kicker product had a passive radiator in it. So we really kind of went back to our roots with these products.
And it works. And like I say, the output of these enclosures is just phenomenal. If you see a little TB8 on the end, it's just out of the screen. I don't know if you get Tim to pan over just a little bit, and maybe I'll move over so you can get it in there as well.
Oh, the QB8 here?
Show them the QB8 over here, because that thing is, it's 9 1/4 by 9 1/2 by 10 1/2 inches.
It's really small, and it's tuned at 31 hertz, 31 or 32.
Yeah, which, that's about the quad box tuning frequency right there.
So it plays really low. It sounds like a much bigger subwoofer than it is.
And of course, 1/4-inch extruded aluminum enclosure. That thing is really beef. 500 watts power handling. I remember we had that at the first CES show, and we had it in that 2013 Mustang, the blue one. And we had an IQ 500 watt amp on that. And I would ask, the reps and people we put in the car, what do you think is in here? And I can't tell you how many said, you got a pair of 12s, a pair of comp 12s, and then you show them, it's just this single little 8-inch box. And they're like, no way are you getting the output out of that little enclosure, because traditionally it's taken big boxes with big ports that take up a lot of area to get that type of performance. But this technology is really cool. We call it a reflex subwoofer or a passive radiator, and it works just like a port.
Yep.
So you've been working on all different versions of these, and I know you do a lot of work with tuning speakers and making other systems, and you do. I envy your job. I thought I had the greatest job in the world, but you actually get to make this stuff.
Yeah, it is pretty fun. I got to admit, I do have a lot of fun. I get to play around with something that is a hobby for me, so it's pretty cool. And what you were mentioning about measuring and playing with and verifying and all this stuff, that's exactly what we use the Klippel for, which is one of our main topics that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yep.
So the Klippel is a acoustic analyzation machine. It can tell us anything and everything about a speaker. So we have several different things that the Klippel does for us. We have one that does our stand measurements, and you guys can see on the video here.
And you made that stand too.
Yeah.
You do it all, Aaron.
This was something that we actually copied from the Klippel stand. But we needed something a little bit more robust for subwoofers that wouldn't resonate, because we can't really have this thing vibrating when we're measuring speakers.
And if I remember, that's bolted to the concrete floor, isn't it?
Yes, it's very rigid and very structurally sound. Because we're hooking up the laser here, for example, and when we're doing that, we don't want vibration because we want to be able to get accurate measurements. But yeah, this is what we use to analyze all of our speakers. We use it for generating Thiel small parameters. That's actually what you see getting ready to happen here. So you see the speaker barely moving here. That's going to be our small signal measurement. And then you'll see, and that determines several things about the parameters of the driver. And then you'll see it moving more right here. That's going to be our large signal. This is going to do things like generate our BL curve, our suspension stiffness curve, and things of that nature. So some things need to be measured via small signal, and some things need to be measured via large signal. And those are some of the curves that you can see there. So for example, you see BL force factor. Ernie, can you pull up that BL curve?
Yeah, if you can pause the video. And while he's doing that, Aaron, we've got actually a couple of these machines, don't we? They each have a different specific function. We really, really want to test our equipment, and these things are approaching 50 grand a piece for these machines. So that's why I always tell you guys, we're not going to be the cheapest out there, but we're going to be the best value product. We test everything. When we tell you it does something, it does it.
Yep.
So
we've got 3 of these machines. The one that we're talking about right now is called the KA3. That's the module that measures our Thiel small parameters, as well as those other things that we were talking about. So right here you can see a large signal. It does our BL force factor. So you guys can see right there, that's a Comp R12, CWR12-4, I believe, 48 CWR12-4.
Oh, the new ones.
Yeah, that's the new Comp
With the forced
R12.
air cooling.
Yes. And you guys can see there, it's got a very symmetrical BL curve. A lot of times we'll measure drivers. We measure a lot of competitor drivers, even a lot of our own. If we have to go back to the drawing board on development and fix some things, sometimes the BL curve will be skewed. That means it may have a little bit more motor strength on the inward stroke than it does on the outward stroke. But we want to do our best to try to balance that. Another thing large signal does is measures our KMS curve. Ernie, can you pull that up? So this shows you what the suspension does. And you can see that blue line. It's skewed a little bit, but that's still pretty symmetrical. You can see that on the coil in stroke, it gets a little bit stiffer than it does on the full coil out stroke.
Right.
But that's pretty natural with a lot of drivers. But that's another thing that we're able to derive from the large signal measurement.
And I think this is just me guessing, but I know, the suspension is not, I shouldn't say it's not symmetrical, but it's curved out rather than curved out and in both. So that might be where that difference is. But you're right. I've seen other curves of other drivers we've measured, and some of those things are all over the charts. So
Yes.
There's a lot of technology that goes into measuring these speakers and make sure that they're going to do exactly what we want them to do, and they're going to sound good doing it.
Yep. So this is one of our workhorse drivers, our CWR. So it's very well balanced. And so back to small signal, since we've talked about some large signal. Ernie, can you pull up the Thiel small parameters? There you go. So as you guys can see, RE, KRM, ERM, CMS, FS, moving mass, MMS, all of these parameters that you guys are familiar with looking at when you're using your box software, this is how we generate that stuff in that Klippel stand. So it's a really cool piece of equipment. It gets a lot of stuff done for us. It records a lot of data. We're able to check all of our samples that come in, even new POs that come in. Sometimes we're able to check those if need be. So we're able to be very thorough and figure out anything we need to figure out about a driver. So that's the KA3. We also have this really cool Klippel module called the PM8. Now, this is what helps us determine the power handling of our drivers, and it's also what really helped us dial in the forced air cooling that you guys hear us talk about so much. Because what it actually does is measure the temperature of the voice coil. So as you can see here, again, we've got the CWR 48 CWR 12.2.
Probably our best-selling woofer.
Yep, and there is a temperature graph over, I believe that's over the course of 4 hours right there. But you can see, when you first start it off, it's cool and it ramps up and then it levels out. That's what we want to see. So before we did our forced air cooling, we had quite a bit higher temperatures than that.
Yeah, if that red line keeps going higher as it goes to the right,
then that's a problem.
It's pretty much going to heat up and shut off. We know with amplifiers, when they heat up and shut off, they cool off and come back on.
Yeah.
With speakers, they don't come back on, so you got to pull it out.
That's right.
But even you notice that it's rated in Kelvin, so very precise measurements on these, and that driver, like I say, you're running a ton of power to it for a long period of time. It's going to take that power. So when we give you a power rating on a speaker, and tell them what we use for signal, because I don't even know to measure the power rating.
When we do this test, we do bandwidth limited pink noise from 20 to 80 hertz.
And that's where you're going to run a subwoofer.
The reason we do, 80 hertz and down is typically where you're going to run a subwoofer, and if we bandwidth limit it, then we're focusing more power within that region. We're also using a ported enclosure because you have less throw from a ported enclosure. The speaker's not going to move as much because the port takes over at a lot of frequencies and puts that load on that woofer. That's going to cause the woofer to get hotter. So basically the point I'm making here is we're putting the woofer in the worst case scenario for you with bandwidth limited pink noise. We play it. In fact, when we're doing not just power testing, when we're doing durability testing, they have to pass a 100-hour test in these conditions under that rated power.
And that's our goal is 100 hours.
Yes.
Typically, what do the competitors use?
Typically, competitors do 4-hour tests, 8-hour tests, and they're not as hard on the subwoofer as this. Like I said, bandwidth limited pink noise.
Well,
I
know for a
ported
fact
enclosure.
That, how well this works because the L7T subwoofers. I was talking with Tim, which is our quality control guy, and he said we're looking at about a 0.79% defective rate.
Yes.
Less than 1% are failing in the feed. That's because of all the testing we do. And when we give you a power rating, we know what's going to handle that power.
Yes.
What you do?
Yes, we've seen major improvements in cooling with our forced air cooling, and also major leaps in reliability with our product. It's been an extremely great tool. Like I said, from helping us dial in our forced air cooling to helping us determine power ratings, and also put our woofers to the test to make sure that they're going to hold up in the field for you guys.
And that's absolutely awesome. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and like I say, it's no fun having a product that you're all excited for, you buy it and it blows up a week later.
That's right. That's right.
Even if it is under warranty, I still don't know why we cover things like that under warranty, but we do, of course.
David
Moyle's asking,
program.
how do you guys run subs in to do these tests? Are you guys trying to mess with me in my reading abilities?
No, I think he's talking about maybe the power to test the subs on. Pro audio in?
Oh,
No, yeah. We actually have pro audio amplifiers that we use. And like I said, they're under those conditions where we have the bandwidth limited pink noise. And to determine the amount of power, sometimes we'll run power. And if we think the thing runs too cool, and it can take some more and still be reliable, then we'll up the power rating. So that's how we use the PM8 to, determine power ratings. We use it to determine power ratings. We use it to verify what we already know a power rating should be. And we use it to, make sure our stuff is super durable.
here's a great question, from Andy. Other than the EBP with the FS and QES, what are some of the general signs that dictate whether a driver is more likely to be using a sealed or a ported enclosure?
Well, you could look at CMS if it's got a little bit stiffer suspension. So if it's got a lower number, it's probably going to handle a ported enclosure a little bit better. But you really need to look at all of the numbers and how they work together.
Yeah.
And if you can, plug it into a piece of box modeling software and see what it does. And that's also where the manufacturer's recommendations come into play, because they know what the subwoofer can do.
I know in the past, there's been a lot of, box building software programs use like 3 or 4 teal small parameters, and that it's not going to be accurate. I mean,
yeah.
What are there, like 26 different parameters that,
Yes.
the speaker has, that, and all those have effect on, the driver power handling, the cone movement, the sound quality, so they're all important. So, it's good if you're going to be doing your own box design, use a good program.
Yes. And, back in the day, to that question, we had our old round solo barrack woofers that first came out. We never recommended ported enclosures back then, but I used some in some ported enclosures and they worked quite well. You just had to cut the power way back, or they would move too easy.
Or a subsonic filter.
Exactly. It's
and
just some precautions you had to take.
Back in '86 when Steve first introduced, the components, a woofer mid-range and tweeter, he was one of the first guys to offer that for car. We actually had a comp and a free air.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this, it looked like the exact same speaker, but one was a C, one was an F. One was designed for a sealed enclosure. Mm-hmm. The free air was designed for an infant baffler ported. And really the difference was the free air speaker had a much stronger suspension.
Yes, so basically, if you took our comp woofer, the C woofer, whatever the resonance of that woofer was in its recommended enclosure, we made the stiffness of the suspension for the free air match that resonance without an enclosure. So that way it gave you similar performance without an enclosure.
And I apologize if you guys have been asking this all along, because I've been waiting for one of these to pop up. And, can you tell us some of the testing on the new Solo X? Well, we use the same type of testing, but if you guys are wanting to know, the specifications on that speaker, the deal is we don't have them out. We haven't released them because we still don't have our first shipment in. I think you don't just take one speaker measurement and publish that spec, right, Aaron?
Correct. We have to get all of our final samples in and have it all approved, and then we take an average of multiple samples before we print our Thiel small parameters. So it's usually the average of 4 or 5 samples.
Just to make sure it kind of hits all bases.
Exactly.
And that's why I always tell people, when my personal philosophy is, if you're going to build especially a sealed or ported enclosure, separate chambers for each speaker, because they're all designed to be exactly the same. The Klippel's going to tell you they're not all exactly the same.
Yeah, you're going to have manufacturing tolerances. You're going to have a little bit of variation in FS and suspension stiffness, and a little bit of variation in moving mass, because somebody might have got a little more carried away with the glue on the assembly line one day. So you're going to have some manufacturing tolerances. blueprints all the time.
And if you guys want to know, what the TL small parameters are, just go into Wikipedia and type in TS parameters, and there's 4 pages of definitions of what each one of those mean and what they do. So if you really want to get into it, the information's out there, but that's why we let the machines do it for us. And speaking of that, we got any more graphs we want to show?
I don't think we have any more graphs, but we do have a third module that we would like to show you guys.
Cool.
So we're going to head over to the listening room. We'll meet you guys over there in a couple of minutes, and we're going to do a live demo of some frequency response and impedance measurements. And then we'll come back to the studio and show you guys how we take that data, bring it over into some crossover software, and tweak crossovers and try to make stuff sound good.
And don't forget, guys, we got 10 minutes left in the competition for the T-shirts and the earbuds competition. Well, it's actually drawings. That's a competition to see who can enter and get it in on time. But once again, register for that for the EB400s, the Tabers, and the Cush NCs and the T-shirts and koozies. So we'll announce those winners at 8:45, but you have less than 10 minutes to sign up. We're going to go to... I got to say this, we're going to go to commercial break or intermission for just a minute or two, and we're going to adjourn back there in one of the labs. So we'll see you guys there.
It's been a long road since the original kicker christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machines became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. Outdoors or on the open road, your sound is kicker.
All right, so what we have here is another Klippel module. This is what we do for wall measurement. So we verify a lot of products here. When we get samples in, we'll measure them to make sure that they match our approved sample. And we also use it to take measurements for tweaking acoustics and making stuff sound good. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys here is how we do an acoustic measurement. What we have here is we have a microphone set up 18.5 inches or a half meter from the speaker that we're measuring. And we're actually measuring a two-way cabinet here with an 8-inch and a tweeter. And we've got the microphone set up right in between the mid and the tweeter. So this is a half meter, half watt measurement instead of a 1 watt, 1 meter. So it does basically the same thing as far as sensitivity, but it gets the microphone a little bit closer to the speaker. It gets it a little bit more near field so that we can pick up some bottom end. Also, it helps us see just what the speaker is doing, because we have it so close to the speaker, and then we can also go in here into the time domain in the Klippel, and we can actually gate some time. We can pull back time in milliseconds. So with the mic being that close to the speaker, we can eliminate any reflection off of either wall, the ceiling, or the floor, so that we're not getting any room effect whatsoever. So it's a real inexpensive way of getting really close to an anechoic chamber measurement without having to drop all that coin on an anechoic chamber. So all we basically do here is we run this thing, it's going to do a few sweeps, and it's going to plot a frequency response curve for us. It usually takes a second to kick in after I hit the button. The relays are clicking as it's going through and doing its thing.
This isn't going to hurt us, is it?
No. So you guys just heard 3 sweeps there. We can set it to do up to 15 or maybe even more than that. But it's going to plot a curve here. So actually, I don't know if you guys can see that on camera there, but it plotted this really nice, smooth, and fairly flat frequency response curve for us. So then what we want to do is run another sweep. I just hit the button, so it's got to do its thing, click through its relays and all of its processes, and it'll run the sweeps and it'll plot an impedance curve for us. There's so much lag time, I often wonder if it's going to work, especially when we're live on camera.
That would be when it wouldn't.
Right.
Aaron, real quickly, why don't you explain to them difference between flat and smooth response and why we don't shoot for flat?
Okay, well, a lot of people think that flat is technically correct, but flat sounds flat. It's not exciting at all. We all kind of want that standard smiley face curve with a little bit of bump on the bottom and, you know, a little bit more sparkle on the top end. But we want it to be smooth. Now, smooth doesn't necessarily mean flat. Just smooth means we want to have as little transition from frequency to frequency as possible. We don't want big notches and big peaks in our curve. We might want it, you know, to rise on the bottom a little bit and rise on the top a little bit, which isn't technically flat, but we want it to be relatively smooth without any major deviation, you know, in output in frequency bands.
And that's one of the advantages for listening to the speakers, you know, in a room like this is we can hear what they sound like. I mean, you know, on paper they can look one way, but we can actually listen to them and say, hey, we like this sound.
Exactly, exactly. So now we've got our impedance curve, and now we can actually take this data. So what we do is we actually measured a full range speaker here. So when we're going to do a crossover design, we'd measure the tweeter individually, then we measure the mid-range individually, and then we measure the full range system without a crossover, because that helps, you know, with our data when we're doing the crossover design. And then we take all of that data and we transfer it over to our crossover software, and we start adding components and tweaking, you know, whether it's a 6 dB high pass on the tweeter or a 6 dB low pass on the mid and a 12 dB high pass on the tweeter. We start playing with it until we get a desirable curve. Then we apply those crossover components. We come back into this room, we listen to it. We may like it, we may not. Usually we don't like it. It's maybe pretty close on the first go round, but it always requires some tweaking, listening to several tracks, lots of different types of music, and tweaking a little bit more.
Lots of aliens hate my Buick.
Yeah, we do. that and old Jennifer Warnes, yep.
Yep.
So yeah, that's our process for achieving our measurement in here. Now, John, did you want to tell them a little bit about this room?
Yep, and actually it is kind of cool. So I step back into the screen, guys. If you notice, this is a bizarre looking room. The reason we use a room like this, it's not a faux anechoic. It is a faux anechoic, not a full anechoic chamber, because we'd be standing on grates and this room would be completely lined. But we've got the acoustic foam on the front. We've got little pads on the walls that actually break up the reflections and the refractions from the sound. So we get a really good idea of what, you know, a speaker's going to sound like, or, you know, how it's going to naturally play. But the other thing about this room is separately suspended from the building. I mean, we're actually on cushions, and here again, it's got its own heating and cooling and humidity control for this room, because humidity plays a part in the speakers, especially with paper cones. But this room is really specifically designed for sound. Now, we do have a partial anechoic room across the hall. We can't show you that right now, but that's a really creepy room to get locked into, because there's almost no echo. Something else, if you guys are, I can't see any feeds in here, but if anybody has posted, you know, why aren't you testing a Kicker speaker? That is a Kicker speaker. Just it's a brand new product that's not been released yet. So you guys get a little special treat to see something that no one else on the outside of Kicker seen. But we can't tell you any more about it than that. But you will see them soon, right?
That's right.
So we're going to head back over, and you're going to actually have some fun and play with some crossovers.
Yeah, we'll show you guys how we tweak crossovers, and like I say, try to make stuff sound good. We think it sounds good, so.
Intermission number 2. We'll see you back over there.
I'm Steve Irby. I'm the president and the founder of Kicker. Back in high school, I was playing in a rock and roll band and needed a bigger speaker for my keyboard. And I went to my dad and asked him for $300. I remember the newspaper kind of dropped, and he says, "Is that something that we could build?" 2 or 3 days later, he came home with a book on audio, and it had plans for building speakers. We built a speaker enclosure and put an amp on it, and I played my keyboard through it, and it sounded really good. I graduated from college and went to grad school. I began to realize I don't want to be a sociologist, and decided that I was going to drop out of grad school and start a speaker company. I had about $12,000 that I had inherited from my grandparents. It seemed to make sense to use it to start a business. And so we bought woodworking tools, we bought plywood.
And through the magic of television or camera vision, we're back. That was really actually kind of cool. I actually never got to see that machine run myself. I hear about it all the time. I get to see and hear the results, but it's cool to actually see it. It is 8:31. The contest has ended. So here in a couple minutes, we're going to announce those winners. And once again, do not forget the McMahon contest. Enter to win that 24-karat gold-plated alternator. And don't forget to go to the Kicker Club on Facebook and post your pictures of your installs so we can show them and maybe get some of you guys to talk about them live. So without any further ado, Aaron, let's talk about some crossovers and let's show what we do with that information and how it works and how it applies.
Yes, sir. So Ernie, can you pull my laptop up, sir?
Probably not, because I have got...
Oh, we need to switch, don't we?
I still had the HDMI. I had to give it up, so sorry, guys. That was my fault. Here we go. Now we should be locked and loaded.
All right, here we go. Okay, so this is our crossover software. So this is what we use to tweak our systems. As you can see here, this is the curve of the speaker that we just measured.
It is pretty smooth from a lot of them I've seen. Not flat, but smooth.
Yep. Now, a lot of times when you guys look up drivers, like if you guys ever do any shopping on Parts Express and you look at the data, everything you look at looks like perfectly smooth.
It's very filtered.
We've bought some of those drivers and we've measured them, and none of them look like that. This is going to be much more realistic to what a speaker actually looks like. And this curve actually has a little bit of smoothing on it as well, but it's not drastic. We're definitely not cheating here. What you see here is realistic.
I'm sure someone's going to ask what this software is.
Yeah, this software is LoudSoft Fine Crossover. They make a whole suite of stuff: Fine Box, Fine Crossover, Fine Motor, Fine DSP. But I don't believe that it is a consumer product.
No, probably.
I think it's only for manufacturers.
And I can't see how any of you guys would need something this elaborate and want to spend this type of money. Let us do it for you, and we'll do it well.
Yeah,
you will, I should say.
And this really does you no good unless you've got an Audio Precision or a Klippel or something that you can take. Well, I mean, you can take acoustic measurement with free software, REW, and the UMic 1 for any of you guys that know about that.
Well, yeah, the REW is some great software.
It really is.
It's pretty advanced.
It's pretty advanced and pretty powerful, especially for free software.
And I use True RTA for a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. So don't feel that you have to have this. But I do want to shout out, we got Regular Guy Audio. We had Lori Boyer. She was actually sitting in here again like she always does.
Yeah.
It's nice to have you guys in and chiming in and, making some comments because, let us know, hey, got any questions, anything you need, and hit that like and subscribe button. And so hit it, Aaron. Tell us how this works.
So basically what I have here is exactly what we have on that cabinet that we measured in there, which is just a 12 dB per octave network on the tweeter. So I can go in here and I can change components, for example. So for that 12 dB network on the tweeter, we've got a cap and a coil. So I'm just going to click on the cap, and I'm going to adjust the values. You guys can't see it because the little windows pop. There you go.
Say, you don't need to see us on this.
Right. So you can see how the curve changes as I change this capacitor value. So
the graph is actually moving real time.
You guys see that graph moving real time as I change that crossover component. So this is what we sit here at our desk and do after we have this data converted and imported into this software so that we can manipulate the driver.
That's a whole lot quicker than actually wiring different values of capacitors in and coils.
Correct. And so here I'm changing the coil value, and you guys can see how that's affecting the curve. You know, maybe in a certain situation, I might want a little bit more mid-range to roll off. In that case, maybe I would go over here to the mid-range side, and I'd go over here to this coil that is at a 0 value now, so it's like it's not there. Add a coil in line.
You notice that mid-range section dropped instantly.
And the mid-range dropped, and I can roll that coil value up, and you start pulling your mid-range down. So you guys can see what a low-pass crossover at 6 dB per octave is doing to that mid-range driver. So this is what we do, and we go back and forth, and we play with this stuff, and we tweak it, and we get the curve that we think we like, and then we go listen to it, and most of the time it doesn't sound very good right out of the gate, and we'll go back and we'll tweak it some more. And the nice thing about this tool is if it doesn't sound good somewhere, we're going to be able to see it in the curve. Oh, I think it's got a little bit too much around this area. What component do we have to add or change to pull that area down? Do we need to go from a 12 dB network on the tweeter to an 18 dB network on the tweeter? Do we need to try flipping the phase on our tweeter? Which is something that I think is kind of interesting here. Typically, when we use a 12 dB per octave network on a tweeter, we actually wire the tweeter 180 degrees out of phase, because for every 6 dB per octave, you're at a 90-degree phase shift.
Either lead or lag, depending if it's a cap or a coil.
Correct. So if you're at 12 dB per octave, you're 180 degrees out of phase. But I didn't wire this tweeter out of phase on this crossover. Let's just see what I did, what happens if I do. So if you hit phase invert, click OK. Oh, that's pretty nasty. So why isn't it working in this situation? Well, in this particular situation,
looks like an all-pass filter.
Yeah, it kind of does. In this situation, the roll-off of the crossover is working in conjunction with the natural roll-off of the tweeter. So since they're coupling together, it's not just a 12 dB per octave roll-off. It's somewhere probably between 18 and 24 dB per octave, so it brings it back in phase. So that's how, in this particular situation, we're able to get away with having smooth response without the tweeter wired out of phase. So very simple network on this particular product, and it worked out really well for us. We started off using just a 6 dB per octave network, which was the cap in line, and it sounded pretty good. But we found that putting this coil in line really sweetened it up quite a bit.
Yeah. Something else that, I think it's kind of interesting, and I'm going to ask you the question, I already know the answer. Do all of our component speakers have crossovers on the mid and tweeters?
Not all of them.
Exactly.
Some of them just have it on the tweeter.
Because of that natural roll-off, it just worked out. They actually sounded better without putting a low pass on the mid-range.
Yes. Now, on our early samples of this product, we did use a coil on the mid-range to roll it off, because the mid-range had much more of a bump and it was a hotter mid-range. Since we did that, what we had our engineer do was actually build that inductance, as much of it as he could anyway, into the coil itself, because your voice coil in your speaker is a 6 dB per octave low pass crossover.
Yep.
It's an inductor. So with him being able to build some inductance into that, we were able to eliminate the additional cost of the coil to roll the speaker off.
So it's really cool. And like I say, if you ever see, some of our crossovers, like even our QSCs, the crossovers basically on the tweeter, the mid has got such a steep roll-off at 5K that we didn't need to add the extra components.
That's right.
So I'd like to point that out, because I've actually been to a training and guys said, oh, you only use a crossover on the tweeter. It's like, well, we only needed one. We don't want to throw components in there to cause more phase shift and more problems if we don't need it.
Correct.
I mean, if we could have drivers that naturally rolled off and crossed over, we wouldn't need any of this. But it's so nice to have the software and be able to design the speaker, up front, changing values as we go, and then actually build it and test it. It's a lot quicker, and it's a lot more fun, I think.
Yeah, and we don't just verify frequency response with this software. We verify impedance, because the way that the drivers couple together and the crossover components together are all going to affect impedance, so we need to make sure our impedance doesn't drop too low. We could look at the total phase to make sure that we don't have any big phase poles.
Don't you have one of those graphs?
Yeah, Ernie, if you can switch back over to the
this might be kind of interesting
laptop
for you guys as well. And we talk about with woofers, the phase or the impedance changes with every type of enclosure, and the frequency depending on the size of the enclosure. I mean, that's why we call it nominal impedance, average impedance.
Correct.
Where when you talk about the TL smalls, the RE is the resistance. I mean, it is the DC resistance of the voice coil, not the impedance.
That's right. So, for example, there's our total impedance magnitude. And you can see that over right in this area, this is an 8 ohm rated product. So we're right at about 8 ohms. Each bar represents 2. So we're 2, 4, 6. We're right at 8 ohms.
That's about 12K.
Yep. And another thing that we want to pay attention to when we're designing is our phase curve, so our total SPL phase. So you can see that dotted line there. And as you can see through our entire bandwidth, we don't have any huge poles. Well, we've got one up here at, close to the end of where you can't hear anymore.
Well, I guarantee you that's past where I can hear.
Exactly, so that's
my age.
That's definitely not an issue way up there, but we don't have any real big poles. We've got a little bit of a sag right through this area, which the only time that's ever a problem is if we had really low impedance right here, or if we were just a little bit under that 8 ohm impedance and we were running it, say, on an 8 ohm stable home amplifier. If your total phase sags a little low and your impedance is a little low, it'll shut that amplifier down. For whatever reason,
we've run into that.
Yeah, your protection circuitry is very sensitive to low impedance if you're on the negative side of phase on a sag such as that. So that's all the kind of stuff that we have to look out for in the design to make sure not only does it sound good, but is it not going to make your amplifier shut off. So just wanted to throw that in there
in
as
a
well.
nutshell. Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and we got a lot of cool tools to play with, and we definitely have great jobs where you play with music and play with cars, and
that's right.
And we continue to do this. So we're getting pretty close to announcing those winners of the contest for tonight. As we're looking up here, give you guys a final chance to type in some questions for us. And once again, if you think of something later, support@kicker.com. I mean, Aaron and I both used to answer those questions on a daily basis, and still every now and then we get questions thrown at us, which is great if the guys get a little stumped or something's really weird. I love good questions that require good answers, or something that requires a little bit of thought. So all right, here we got a question from Wayne Slane. Speaking of performance, why do smaller subs reproduce low hertz greater than smaller subs, and smaller reproducing high hertz that's greater than bigger subs? Aaron, can you decode that?
Well, we can manipulate subs to do pretty much whatever we want to do. I mean, obviously, your larger subs are going to have the natural ability to play lower. Typically, they have a lower FS, right out of the gate, so they're just going to be a lower playing sub. But we can take a driver with a slightly higher FS, like a small 8-inch or a 10-inch, and depending on the application, we can make it play really low. So we can kind of do whatever we want, whether it's a small sub or a big sub. You put a big 15-inch subwoofer in a really small box, and you're going to lose a lot of that low bass, and it's going to play, boomy and punchy.
You've got a mid bass out of 15.
Yeah, exactly. 15-inch mid bass driver.
So that's kind of one of the things we do recommend if you want to use mid bass. Our RT drivers are great for mid bass. Put them in half the size sealed enclosure they're recommended for woofers, and very tight, very punchy, but very accurate. So SJC Audio Guy, the SFFV at Kicker, what percentage of speakers do you test out of every manufacturer run? Good question.
That is a question for our head of QA, but man, don't quote me on this, but I think it's a 10%. Unless we're hearing something from the field, we might do a more thorough check, larger percentage, but I think typically it's 10% on incoming POs.
I guess it depends on if he's asking if we're testing for sound or durability or
Right,
quality.
right.
And I will tell you, when we first produce a product, I mean, sometimes those products are 100% QA.
Yes.
I mean, every single one is tested before it goes out of the building. Then as that production runs for a longer period of time and we see we're not having any failures, they'll start to scale those numbers back. But if we start seeing a problem, what's really cool about, working here and knowing the inner workings of the company, we do something called a running change. We do it both in electronics and with speakers, where we may make a change in the manufacture and the design, and we don't necessarily tell you. It doesn't change the performance of the product, but it may make it a whole lot more dependable. Might change a cap or resistor value in an amplifier that we're having those fail. But we'll do that as what we call a running change, and we don't have to give it a whole new model number and change everything about it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of testing that goes on. So cool. Any other good questions out there? I think we're just about ready to announce those contest winners. Todd says, preference, or what would you go with? 10-inch comp RT truck box with a passive radiator, or an L7T12 downfiring facing rear behind the wall? You've got all kinds of variables in that question.
Yeah.
What do you think, Aaron?
I'd probably go with the 12. Quite honestly.
Well, and I think you're right. And, these new L7 downfiring enclosures are impressive.
They're awesome. I'm just a fan. I'm kind of partial to the L7T because it's an awesome shallow mount subwoofer. I have a pair of them in my truck. So, yeah.
And you actually did two 12s, if I remember. You built that box and back for two L7T12s under the seat of, that was a Tundra, isn't it? That what you put them in?
It's a Ram.
Ram. Okay.
Yeah.
So we were actually listening to the L7T enclosures, and I don't know if I should, let the cat out of the bag, but we actually compared against the TRTP12. Mm-hmm. So the 12-inch L7T downfiring versus the TRTP12 with the passive, with the RT with the passive, and there was not a lot of difference in output between them.
That's right. We're making up for having no passive radiator with the squared cone a little bit, so.
And that I will say I think the L7 probably played a little bit lower, but and overall it's going to handle more power and eventually play louder, but don't be surprised if you get a ton of output from these L7T woofers. Look, you've got them, I've got them. I absolutely love those speakers, and it shows. The L7T is probably my favorite bang for the buck in square woofers. Till this guy comes out.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think that's going to fit under the seat of your truck or mine, either one. So, all right. Well, we're getting real close to that contest end time. Again, one last request. If we got any more, questions up here, you guys look like we're. He said we got one. What are your all thoughts on the compression tweeters versus silk dome? Aaron, this is an area that you know well.
Well, it just depends on what you're going for. It's kind of two different applications. Compression drivers are going to be made to just be super loud. Most of the compression drivers that I hear are, they're a little bit on the phasey side, not the best sound quality, but they really push the sound out. A silk dome tweeter obviously is going to be your choice for sound quality. They're smooth, they're typically not harsh or in your face, and so that's what I would do. If sound quality silk dome, going for output in an SPL or demo rig, probably going to go with the compression tweeters.
And I think, we've talked about this, maybe even doing an entire show on different types of drivers. Mm-hmm. Tweeters, you got, cone tweeters, you got piezo tweeters, you got dome tweeters, you got
ring radiators.
You got ribbon tweeters.
Bullets.
The compression. There's so many different styles, and they all have a purpose. And there is no right or wrong. It's just whatever you guys like the sound of. And I'm with Aaron. I'm a silk dome. And of course you got the extroverted versus introverted dome. There's different thoughts each way. But it just comes down to what sounds good to you guys. And we're going to continue to keep doing this and making our products the best we can, so you guys continue to buy them. So anything else you want to throw in there? Man, that's been a lot of fun.
I think that's about it, man. I think that wraps up the Klippel.
Well, it's definitely been a pleasure having you on here and learning, behind the scenes, that these guys don't get to see all the time. And, that a lot of companies probably don't really want to share everything they do or everything they don't do, I should say. Yeah. But it's really cool. And, we take pride in our product, and it shows, with the sound quality. And, Steve approving everything every single day. Coming up on 50 years. That's been a long time. Kicker's been out there, and we're, world leader in just about every category of, products that we're in. So that being said, let's give away some stuff. What do you think, Aaron? You want to give away some stuff? I'm going to let you give away the third and the first. I'll do the second place winner. So we'll give you the honors.
All right.
Reading the first and giving the grand prize away.
Okay.
So who's going to be our third place winner? Throw it up there, JW.
Looks like our third place winner is Daniel W. from Colorado.
Not too far away. I hope it's not as cold as it is here. I mean, it was a little chilly this morning.
It was, man. I wish
Weather
the
has
would
been
make its
changing.
mind up.
I am ready for summer. I'm ready to have the windows down and go drive around, listen to music. But Daniel, you're going to win the EB400 weather-resistant earbuds. You're going to win the gray T-shirt and the kicker koozie. And that's going to bring us to the second place winner, which is going to be, and drum roll please, JW, winner number 2 is going to be Mike C. from Utah. Well, Mike C., you're the winner of the Tabor headphones.
I think we know who that is.
Yep, we got a couple Mike C's, I think. So, but that's awesome, Mike, that you won that. And like I say, make sure you guys always remember to register. And that's going to be our grand prize winner tonight. Aaron, who's going to be our grand prize winner that's going to get the Cush NCs?
Grand prize winner for a pair of Cush NCs is Mike M. from Tennessee.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Mike. We got Mike C., we got Mike M., and
got them all. We got all the mics.
Might as well. So once again, watch for an email from Bill. He's going to need obviously your name, your address, your phone number, and your shirt size. So that way we get all the things to you. Obviously, it doesn't matter with headphones what shirt size you wear. But, phone number is important. Like I say, watch for an email from Bill, and you need to respond. I think it's within 7 days because, we can't keep that stuff around for so long. And by gosh, there's other people waiting to win it. If you don't want to claim it, we'll give it away to somebody else. So win your prizes. So, JW, what else we got for questions? We got a little bit of time to kill if you guys want. Didn't see a passive radiator for the L7s. Also, can you have one radiator with 2 powered 12s? What do you think there, Aaron?
Well, the only product we do have a radiator for on the L7 is this QB8 that we previously talked about. So that is the one product that we do have. And if you're going to do combinations like you're talking about, I'd probably do 1 powered woofer and 2 radiators, if anything. It all just depends on how much throw the woofer has versus the radiator, but you typically want a little bit more passive radiator than you do subwoofer because you don't want to overextend it.
Yeah, and a lot of times you'll see they'll use like a 6-inch passive and a 4-inch woofer, or a 10-inch woofer and a 12-inch passive. You see that quite a bit.
Yeah. The passive is typically a little bit bigger.
And what's the advantage of like I say, we talk about this guy up here with that plug. What's the advantage of more or less weight on the passive? How does that actually tune it?
So more weight tunes it lower, and less weight tunes it higher. So if you want it to play with more low extension, add some more weight. But you don't want to add so much weight that you take away efficiency. The way I usually tune a passive radiator enclosure is I weight it up until it gets lower and lower and lower. And I want to get it as low as I can until it starts losing audible output. Because then you start kind of,
and you have to
defeating the purpose.
Compensate for that with amplifier power,
which is going to burn up your woofer.
And I was going to say, eventually that just adds to more heat.
It's too much of a load on your woofer. Your woofer doesn't move enough, and so it gets hot and wants to burn up. So that's how I typically tune it, and it usually ends up tuning pretty low, and it's a well-balanced system that way.
It's basically the same as car suspensions. That's all got to work together. The rebound versus the throw, and you got to have the right speed. So you do one area wrong, and it's just not going to handle or perform right. So
that's right. And now to that question that we got about the passive radiators and how many you should use versus an active woofer, you could see we're using a 10-inch woofer and a 10-inch passive radiator here, but we've designed enough throw in that passive radiator so that when it's moving and playing that low tuning stuff, it's not going to bottom out.
Right. You got to have that control. So Chance has got a question. I picked up a set of the QS 6x9 and noticed the biamp feature on the passive crossover, and the speakers have 100 watts RMS. So should I split the power output to 50 watts to each channel? What do you think there, Aaron?
Well, if you're going to biamp, you're going to be running on individual channels. So your only option in that situation would be to hook the tweeter up to one channel and the mid up to the other. So whatever that power produces at 4 ohm, that amp produces at 4 ohms is what you're going to get.
Yeah, and I think kind of what he's leading to, I kind of read where you're going, is if the speakers are rated at 100, and we talked about, with an amplifier, if you've got 2 ohms versus 4 ohms, we're talking about something that does not have a separate crossover. So when the customer that was talking earlier that was asking about putting the 2 6.5s on one channel, and you split that 90 watts up into 45 by 2, it's really weird what happens with passive crossovers. If you have 2 4 ohm speakers and you put them in parallel, but you have a passive crossover that does not have the overlap, it still is a 4 ohm load, right, Aaron? It's kind of bizarre.
As long as you're separating the frequencies that each of those drivers plays.
Yep.
As long as they're not overlap, it's not true parallel.
So in that application, if you're using the speakers with the passive crossover and you basically run 100 watts to it, it's going to be a 100 watt 4 ohm load on the amplifier. If you bi-amp them, I'm not going to say put 100 watts in the tweeter because you definitely don't want to do that. But that mid-range is still going to handle that 100 watts bi-amped. And of course, when you put the crossover on the tweeter, it's going to take a lot of that power away. And once again, you'll just have to tune it accordingly.
Yes, and you'll have independent gain control, be able to turn the gain on the tweeter down pretty significantly.
Yeah, because that's one of the things the crossover does is limits a lot of that power that goes to the tweeter.
Yeah.
So once again, it's all about proper tuning, guys. And maybe one of these days we'll do an entire show and just tune a car right here on set if we can get one in here.
Why not?
Jason Stewart says, I have a question. Where can I find updated speaker displacements of the subs? I think that's Jeremy's deal, isn't it?
Yeah, man. We'll have to look into that, Jason, and get back with you. I know we've had displacements on subwoofers printed in the past, but they're typically like 0.06, 0.09 cubic feet, pretty insignificant when it comes to changing the sound of your enclosure. In other words, if you built an enclosure without knowing the displacement of the woofer, and then you put the woofer in, you're going to have a hard time hearing the difference between that little bit of volume, that 0.06
Unless
or
you can hear grass grow.
0.09 cubic feet.
Yeah.
But if you would like that information, we can definitely dig it up for you.
Well, and that brings about another good point. With our specifications or enclosure volumes in the owner's manuals, do they need to compensate for the driver displacement, or they just build them to the volume we tell them?
Build them to the volume that we say, because we compensate for that for you. Now, a lot of our specifications will say this volume plus port. So you do need to add the port displacement in that situation.
And we don't add the port volumes. We don't give them to you because it depends on if your port's going to be, PVC tube or 3/4 inch MDF.
That's correct.
That's going to make a big difference on port volume. So something else that's interesting, you talk about, if people are wondering, what do you mean by displacement? If you look at this speaker, it's got a magnet and it's got a basket and some cone dished in. So that is going to take up some of the airspace. What's really interesting, if you invert the speaker, it doesn't take up that airspace, but it actually adds just a little bit. So I've actually done that for customers before that, brought me a box that's been too small acoustically. They couldn't get the low bass out of it, and just by flipping the speaker over actually lowered the resonance of the system. It actually played a little bit lower. But that doesn't always look as good, and it's not always possible, but that is a possibility. It's like the guys, with the SPL put the ports outside the box. It's kind of what we're doing there, just putting the magnet outside. All right, what do we got next? Adair says, I'm having a hard time picking between 3 different drivers for my LS8. They're all over 100 dB sensitive. Wow, that is actually amazing. I just don't know which one to get. What's interesting, I'm glad you put that up there. We start talking about TL Smalls. There is a sensitivity rating, and a lot of people confuse that with efficiency. And big difference. Efficiency is power in versus power out. It has nothing to do with volume. But obviously, if it's more efficient, it's going to play louder. But efficiency is going to be power in versus power out. Sensitivity is how loud does it play. 1 watt, typically 1 meter. And 100 dB sensitivity is pretty efficient. It's not going to take a lot of power to make that play loud. But that basically, unfortunately, there really isn't a good technical answer to that question. It's whatever sounds good to you, my friend. Whatever works and whatever fits your budget and you can handle. So We're getting pretty close to 9 o'clock Central Time. Once again, don't forget every Tuesday night, 7:30, right here on Kicker YouTube and Facebook, live from the UnMasked studios and with some awesome, cool guests. We're here every week, and you can always watch the replays on the Kicker Facebook and the YouTube channel, and you can actually go to the Kicker website, go to the video section, download them there. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Hope you guys had a good time tonight. I know we have. Aaron, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. It's been fun working with you. God, it's been 23 years since we've been working together.
I know. It's
Different
a long time.
Well, I don't see you all the time, so.
You look back at some of those old pictures and you can tell.
Yeah. What's really awesome is, I don't know if we should say this, but when I started, your mom was working here, and she was one of my favorite people. She was awesome, too. And you have other family that is and have worked here.
My wife works here. My brother used to work here. I have a niece that works here. I had a nephew that worked here in a temporary position.
We have a lot of good people. We've got a lot of good Surats around here. But with that being said, thanks for being on the show, Aaron. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Come back and see us again next week, same time, and we'll keep doing some more cool car audio stuff. Thanks, guys.